Does God exist? Before you answer too quickly, just look around. We live on a planet moving through space, held within an enormous and ordered universe. We are surrounded by life so complex that we are still trying to understand it. Human beings everywhere have searched for something beyond themselves. We pray, we hope, we ask why we are here, and yet we are told often that all of this can be explained without God. Maybe, but I am not convinced. I'm not going to try to prove God to you in 10 minutes. I am not trying to win an argument either. I simply want to share 4 reasons why I personally find belief in God more reasonable than believing that everything is ultimately just an accident. You may agree with me, you may disagree with me, but I think the question is worth thinking about. Firstly, the world is simply too amazing. When I was a child, I used to look at aeroplanes and wonder how tons of metal would possibly stay in the air. Of course, as you grow older, you learn about lift, engines, aerodynamics, and all the science behind flying. But strangely, understanding some of the science doesn't make it less amazing. In some ways, it makes it even more amazing. And then I began to think about something much bigger than an aeroplane. Look at the universe. The Earth is moving through space. It is orbiting the Sun. The Moon orbits the Earth. Other planets follow their paths. Stars and galaxies exist across distances that are almost impossible for us to comprehend. And yet there is order. There are patterns. There are laws of nature that work with remarkable consistency. Our planet is also able to support life. We have water. We have an atmosphere. We have light. We have gravity. We have temperatures that allow life to exist. And then look at life itself. Look at the human body, the heart, the brain, the eye, the complexity of a single living cell. Look at a child being born. Look at the diversity of plants and animals. Look at the stars on a clear night. For me, the question is not simply, can science explain how some of these things works? Of course it can. The deeper question is, how do we account for the fact that there is an ordered, life-supporting universe here at all? There is an old illustration that says, if you find a watch, you naturally assume there was a watchmaker. Why? Because when you see order, complexity, and something that appears to work together meaningfully, it is natural to wonder whether there is intelligence behind it. Now, I know that illustration has its limitations. The universe is not literally a watch, but the basic instinct makes sense to me. When I look at the universe, I find it easier to believe there is a mind behind it than to believe there is ultimately no mind behind it at all. For me, the more I learn about the world, the less ordinary it seems. It is astonishing that anything exists. It is even more astonishing that the universe is ordered in such a way that we can study it, understand parts of it, live in it, and ask questions about it. That makes me wonder about a creator. Well, secondly, human beings have always looked beyond themselves. This, I believe, the second thing that makes me think is humanity itself. Across history and across cultures, human beings have repeatedly looked beyond the visible world. Different cultures have believed very different things, different gods, different spiritual traditions, different ideas about what lies beyond this life. Some have looked to the heavens, some to spirits, some to ancestors, some to a creator. I'm not saying all these beliefs are the same, and I'm certainly not saying that because people believe something, it must therefore be true. People can believe things that are wrong, but I find the pattern fascinating. Human beings keep asking questions such as, who made us? Why are we here? Is there something beyond what we can see? What happens when we die? Is there someone listening when we pray, when I pray? Is there a purpose to life at all? You do not see animals doing this in the way human beings do. Animals eat, sleep, reproduce, protect themselves, and communicate. But human beings ask about eternity. We build temples and churches. We pray. We bury our dead with meaning and ritual. We wonder whether life continues beyond death. We ask questions about the soul, purpose, and God. That seems to be something deeply human. And I find myself asking why. Why does this search for the divine or the spiritual appear so persistently in human life? Why do we keep looking beyond ourselves? Why do we seem to have a sense that there may be more to reality than what we can see and touch? Again, this does not prove God exists, but I don't think it should be dismissed too quickly either. Perhaps human beings search for God because we are simply frightened of death. Perhaps religion developed because people needed explanations. Those are possible explanations. But there is another possibility. What if this longing is there because human beings really were made for something beyond ourselves? What if our search for God is not merely an accident of human psychology? What if it tells us something about who we are? That possibility has always made sense to me. Thirdly, faith, prayer, and hope seem to do something to us. The third reason is more personal. This reason is more personal. This is not an argument that proves God. It is simply something I have observed again and again. Human beings need hope. We need meaning. We need some sense that our lives matter. And there is research showing associations between religious faith, spiritual practice, participation in religious communities, hope, and various measures of well-being. Now, there can be many explanations for that. People in faith communities have stronger social relationships. They may have people supporting them when life is difficult. They may have practices that help them deal with stress. So I would never say people who pray do better, therefore God exists. That would be far too simplistic. But I still find the whole thing interesting. Faith does something to people. Hope does something to people. Prayer does something to people. Believing that life has meaning changes the way you live. Believing that suffering is not the end of the story can change the way you carry suffering. Believing that you are not alone can give you strength when you feel very alone. I have seen this many times. I have seen people go through grief and still have hope. I have seen people face serious illness with remarkable peace. I have stood with people close to death who were not pretending that death was easy, but who had a deep confidence their lives were in God's hands. I have seen people pray when there was nothing else they could do. And somehow, hope enabled them to keep going. Of course, someone could say that is only psychological, maybe some of it is. But then I find myself asking another question. What if human beings respond so deeply to hope, prayer, meaning, and faith because we actually were made for God? We get hungry because we need food. We get thirsty because we need water. We long for relationship because human beings are relational creatures. Could our deep longing for meaning eternity and God also tell us something. I don't claim that this proves anything, but it makes me think. Maybe faith is not simply something human beings invented because we are weak. Maybe there is something in us that reaches toward something real. Fourthly, science has not disproved God. It's quite simple. Sometimes people speak as though modern science has made belief in God unnecessary. As though hundreds of years ago, people needed God because they did not understand the universe. But now science has explained everything and God is no longer required. I have never found that argument very convincing. Science is extraordinary. It has transformed human life. It has given us medicine, technology, engineering, and extraordinary understanding of the physical world. I am deeply thankful for science. And I do not see a conflict between learning how the universe works and believing that God created it. If I understand how an aeroplane flies, that does not mean nobody designed the aeroplane. Understanding the mechanism does not automatically answer the question of ultimate origin. Science can explain a great deal about how the universe works. It can investigate how stars form. It can tell us how gravity behaves. It can study cells. It can study DNA. It can investigate the brain. It can tell us extraordinary things about the history of the universe. But there are questions science does not answer simply by putting something under a microscope or running an experiment. Why is there a universe in the first place? Why are there laws of nature? Why is the universe understandable? Why does anything exist rather than nothing? Why are we here asking these questions at all? And ultimately, is there a creator behind all of this? That is not simply a scientific question. It is a philosophical question. It is a question that the ultimate nature of reality. So when someone says science has disproved God, I simply don't think that is true. Science has explained an enormous amount about the world, but explaining how something works does not necessarily explain why there is something there to work in the first place. In fact, for me, scientific discovery often increases the sense of wonder. The more we discover about the universe, the more extraordinary it seems. The more we understand about the human body, the more astonishing life appears. The science has never pushed me away from belief in God. If anything, it has made the question of God more interesting. So does God exist? I cannot prove God exists I cannot prove his existence in this short period of time. And I don't think any honest person should pretend that there are no difficult questions. There are. If God exists, why is there suffering? Why does God sometimes seem silent? Why do religions disagree? Those are serious questions, and they deserve serious discussion. But those questions do not make the wonder of God's existence disappear. When I look at the wonder and order of the universe, when I look at humanity's persistent search for something beyond ourselves, when I see the place of faith, prayer, hope, and meaning in human life, and when I recognize that science has not removed the deeper question of why anything exists at all, I find belief in God completely reasonable. Actually, for me, it makes more sense of the world I see and the human life I experience than the idea that ultimately there is nothing behind it. I'm not asking you to agree with me today. I'm simply asking you not to dismiss the question too quickly. Look again at the universe. Look at life. Look at human beings. Look at yourself and ask honestly, is it really unreasonable to think there may be a creator behind all this? For me, the more I look, the harder it becomes to believe that there is no one there. Because I believe there is a creator.